So I'm going to be using a Brill Fat Face, and this is available if you have an Adobe subscription. It's available on Adobe fonts, but you can use whatever font you want. If you don't have the Adobe subscription, you don't have to have that. You can use whatever serif typeface you want. So I'm going to type in fantastic, and I'm going to make sure I have a Brill Fat Face on. So I'm just going to go up to my character panel and do a Brill. And all I did is I selected our type tool to go ahead and start typing. So selecting the type tool, we'll go over this in way more detail a little bit later. So it looks like the spacing between my characters is a little off from another project, but this is great because I get to kind of show you the character panel a little bit, and we'll go over this in more detail. I'm going to be changing the spacing or the tracking between the lines back down to default, which is 0. So let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. And we are going to emulate this look here. So we're going to kind of create this border. So if I were to add a stroke to this, so let's add a stroke, and I were to make it bigger, and maybe I put it on the outside, it's not really looking too good. It's not looking the same as below. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something called outlining the type, because right now, let's go ahead and remove the stroke. I can't do a whole lot to the type in terms of adding borders and doing a path, outline path. So we really want to turn this typography into an object, just like a circle, just like we did with some of the other things where we just want to have it be a shape. So we're going to right click and we're going to do what's called create outlines. So we're creating outlines. So now it's no longer live editable type, it's just like a regular symbol. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go up to, and now we're going to go up and do an offset path. So we're going to go path, offset path, we want to expand it, so we want to remove that subtraction sign. Preview, and we're going to definitely bring that down a notch. Let's do 0.1. Let's do 0.05. And you'll notice that it has these sharp edges, and if you want that effect, great. But if you want a smooth, kind of a smooth border, just go down to join and do a round. So it'll kind of round it off for you. We're going to go ahead and click OK, and it's going to create 2 different layers. We have this background layer going on. I'm just going to make this color. And we also have these letters going on. So let's go ahead and ungroup this. Just right click, ungroup. If you ever can't access something, try to right click and ungroup it. And I'm just going to try to get those letters together. And I'm just going to kind of sample that color. So you can see how you can create a great border. And the thing about this is these overlap, and you kind of want it to look like below, where it looks like it's one, almost a sticker on the back. So what we could do here, we have total control over this, so we can move these in and out. And see how this T, or this I is in front of the T? We could just take all the borders. This is the border, selecting all the, holding down Shift, selecting all the borders, and I'm going to send all this to the back. All right, so now all the type is in the front and the border is all in the back, and we just replicated that pretty good. So that's kind of how we did that. Let's go ahead and move it in front here. The size might be a little different, but overall it's pretty darn close. Fantastic. No pun intended. So let's do the opposite. Let's do a subtraction. Let's do a subtract sign for this modern. So this modern is going to be a little bit more complicated. We're going to type in modern, and we want to add a little bit of a bend to our type. So I just selected the type tool and just typed in modern. Let's do a bend. So we're going to go down here and emulate this bend. So how do we bend and warp text? So I'm going to go up to effect and have it all kind of spelled out right here if you want to go back and do this on your own. So we're going to go to effect, warp, and arc. So we're going to go up to effect, go down to warp, and this is a lot of different warp options we can do with type. Like if we do a wave, let's go ahead and select our type first. Let's go to warp, wave, and let's kind of see, you can see all sorts of kind of interesting things we can do with this tool. But what we're going to do, let's go ahead and zero all that out. Let's go down to arc. So this is going to do a nice arc shape. We're just going to, we could do a kind of an inverse arc or the opposite. We just want a little bit of curve here. We don't want anything dramatic, just a little curve. Click on OK. And we want to make sure we create outlines. That's the next step, is right click, create outlines. So now it's going to be editable text. And now we could be able to go to Object, Path, Offset Path, and we're going to do a negative this time. So let's do a negative sign. We're going to go inward, click on Preview, and then just click on OK. So now we're going to be able to get our eyedropper tool. Let's sample that gold. Let's go ahead and group that inside together. So we want to be able to have access to this, but since we have this arc on, this is another little complicated step, but hang with me. So what we want to do is we created outlines, which is great, but we still have this arc that's kind of built in here. We want to be able to bake that in. We want to be able to finalize that arc. That means it's not going to be editable again, but it's going to be created like an object. So what we want to do is we want to go to Object, Expand Appearance. So anytime you do an effect like warp or flag or any of those little warp options with type, if you want it to be baked in or finalized, you go to Object, Expand Appearance. So now it's going to be treated just like an object. So that arc is now baked in, just like creating outlines, just like outlining a path. So now I have full control over all these little elements, and we can ungroup it. Just right click ungroup. And I know this is quite complex for your first 2 hours in Adobe Illustrator, but I want you to be able to rewatch these lessons and come back as well after you've done some other work and other projects. And so I'm just doing the eyedropper tool, kind of adding that offset path. We could offset the path again, so I'm selecting just this middle highlighted area, and I can go to Path, Offset Path. We could do another negative. Might have to do it a lot lighter, so just maybe a 0.01, maybe a 0.001, just really light, and we can add like a third layer here. So I kind of did one color, then a lighter color, and then a middle color. So that's kind of how that happened right there. Of course, you could do it straight across. If you don't want to have the arc or the curve, you want to make it more simple and not go through quite all those steps that we had to go through to create that. That was definitely more of an intermediate kind of project. Don't feel intimidated at all by that. Okay, so let's go over, we're going to do some overall practice. And then we're going to get to do this really cool, fun illustration. We're going to start to work with color a little bit, working with the curvature tool, pen tools, shape tools, corner round tools. We're going to use all the tools that we have that we've learned in the last hour. We're going to be able to create this really cool little fun illustration.